She looked like she didn't belong. Worn shoes with the soles peeling apart. A scarf that had been washed so many times the color had faded into nothing. The moment she stepped through those glass doors, every eye in that store turned toward her like she was something to be swept out with the trash. The staff didn't even try to hide their disgust. They laughed at her right to her face. In a room full of diamonds worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. What none of them understood, what not a single person in that building could have guessed, was that she wasn't there to buy anything at all. She wasn't checking prices. She was checking hearts. And out of everyone working in that store that afternoon, only one young woman passed the test. That decision, made in the space of a few quiet seconds, would end up shattering an entire family's illusion of who they really were. It would expose the cruelty hiding behind expensive suits and polished smiles. And it would lift a woman who had nothing out of a life of being overlooked and place her somewhere she never once imagined she would stand. But before any of that happened, before the tears, before the exposure, before the ring and the wedding and the fall of the people who thought they were untouchable, there was just a poor old woman standing in a luxury store, and a young shop assistant who had been taught, somewhere along the way, that kindness costs nothing and means everything. Stay with us until the end, because the final twist in this story is one that even the people who lived through it never saw coming. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand how a single act of kindness could bring down one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast, you have to understand who Angela Carter was before any of this happened. Who was the old woman really? And why did her presence in that store change the course of so many lives? Why did one employee treat her with dignity, while an entire staff of trained professionals treated her like garbage? And what would it eventually cost the people who mocked her? Those questions sat at the center of everything that followed. And by the end of this story, you will understand exactly how far people are willing to go to protect their image, and how far one honest woman was willing to go to protect her integrity. Angela Carter was 26 years old, working behind the counter of Sterling & Cole, one of the most prestigious jewelry stores in the city. She had taken the job 9 months earlier, desperate for steady income after her mother's medical bills had drained what little savings the family had left. Angela had grown up in a working-class neighborhood where nobody owned anything close to what sat behind the glass cases she polished every day. She understood what it meant to want for things. She understood what it meant to be looked at differently because of the clothes on her back or the car she didn't drive. That understanding shaped the way she treated every person who walked through those doors, whether they were dressed in fur coats or torn sneakers. Her manager, a sharp-tongued woman named Denise Walker, made Angela's life difficult from her very first week. Denise ran that store like her own personal kingdom, and she made sure everyone under her knew their place. When Angela made a sale, Denise found a way to claim part of the commission for herself. When wealthy clients walked in, Denise assigned Angela to cleaning duty, running errands, or restocking the vault room, while the senior staff handled the customers who actually spent money. Angela rarely complained. She needed the paycheck too badly to risk losing it over a fight she couldn't win. Every morning, she put on a tired smile and told herself the same thing. This would not be her life forever. The senior staff at Sterling & Cole treated Angela with a similar lack of respect. They mocked her clothing behind her back, sometimes not even bothering to lower their voices. They redirected her clients toward themselves when the sales looked promising, then handed her the difficult customers who complained about everything and bought nothing. Angela absorbed all of it quietly. She had learned a long time ago that arguing with people who already saw you as beneath them rarely changed their minds. It only gave them more ammunition. So she showed up every day, did her work, and reminded herself that her paycheck was feeding a family that depended on her, even if nobody in that building valued what she brought to it. On an ordinary afternoon in early spring, while Angela arranged a display of diamond necklaces along the front counter, the door of the shop swung open, and an elderly woman walked in, wearing a threadbare coat and shoes that had clearly seen better decades. Her hair was tied back in a simple scarf, and she moved slowly, as though her joints ached with every step. The reaction from the staff was immediate and merciless. One employee actually stepped in front of her and told her flatly that this was not the kind of store meant for someone like her. Denise herself crossed the room, looked the woman up and down, and told her outright that Sterling and Cole did not serve people who looked like beggars. The rest of the staff laughed. Some of them didn't even try to hide it, covering their mouths and exchanging glances like they had just witnessed the funniest thing that had happened all week. The old woman did not argue or raise her voice. She simply said she wanted to look around, her tone soft and unbothered by the insults being thrown at her. Angela watched the entire exchange from across the room, and something in her chest tightened. She knew exactly what it felt like to be dismissed because of appearances, to be judged before anyone bothered to learn a single thing about who you actually were. Without thinking twice, she walked over, gently placed a hand on the woman's arm, and asked if she would like a glass of water. The old woman's eyes lit up at the small gesture, as though nobody had offered her anything with genuine warmth in a very long time. Angela ignored the whispers behind her and brought back a cold glass of water, helping the woman find a seat near the counter. She told her to take her time and let her know if she needed anything at all. The woman studied Angela's face for a long moment, her rough, weathered hand resting gently over Angela's, and told her that good things happen to good people, and that she should remember those words. Angela didn't understand why, but something about the way the woman said it settled deep into her chest, like a promise she couldn't yet explain. After finishing her water, the old woman asked Angela for help, picking out 10 complete jewelry sets. Angela blinked, certain she had misheard. The woman repeated herself, calm and certain, saying she wanted the finest pieces in the store: diamonds, gold bangles, and custom rings. Angela's heart began racing. This could be the largest sale of her career, the kind of moment that might finally force Denise to acknowledge her worth. She spent nearly an hour selecting the most elegant pieces in the store, polishing gold bracelets, opening velvet ring boxes, and matching earrings to complement each necklace with careful precision. The other employees watched from a distance, whispering that Angela was wasting her time on someone who clearly could not afford anything in that building. When Angela finally laid out the complete selection, she told the woman the total came to just under $200,000. The room went completely silent. Denise smirked from across the counter, arms crossed, clearly enjoying whatever was about to unfold. The old woman patted the pockets of her coat, then let out a soft, almost amused laugh, admitting she didn't have any money on her at that moment. The store erupted into laughter almost instantly. One of the senior staff shouted that Angela had wasted an entire hour on a woman who couldn't afford a single ring, let alone 10 complete sets. Denise walked toward Angela with slow, deliberate steps, her heels clicking against the marble floor, and told her flatly that she really was foolish for believing a woman dressed like that could ever afford real diamonds. Angela turned back to the woman and asked gently if she truly had no money at all. The woman explained that she did have money, but it belonged to her grandson, a very wealthy man, and she simply needed to track him down. Denise burst into another fit of laughter at that explanation, repeating the story to the rest of the staff, as though it confirmed every insult they had already thrown at the woman. The room howled with mockery, but Angela refused to join in. Instead, she reached into her own purse, pulled out what little cash she had for the week, and pressed it gently into the old woman's trembling hands, telling her it was enough for a taxi ride home, and that she shouldn't worry about anything else. The old woman stared at the money in stunned silence, calling Angela a rare soul in a voice thick with emotion. Denise, furious that her humiliation attempt had backfired into something resembling compassion, stepped forward and fired Angela on the spot, accusing her of dragging filth into a store built for a wealthy clientele and ruining the image of the entire company. Angela did not argue. She picked up her bag, took a breath to steady herself, and walked out of the store without another word, unaware that her life was about to change in ways she could never have predicted. Before leaving, the old woman turned to Denise with a calm but firm warning that wealth was never just about money, and that she would come to understand that lesson far sooner than she expected. The old woman stepped into a taxi outside the shop and gave the driver an address that led to one of the largest private estates on the outskirts of the city. When the car pulled through the gates, the driver's mouth fell open at the sight of the mansion in front of them. Inside those walls waited Marcus Sinclair, the 34-year-old CEO of Sinclair Jewelers, one of the most powerful luxury retail empires in the country. Marcus rushed to greet his grandmother the moment she walked through the door, demanding to know where she had been for the entire afternoon. She told him calmly that she had gone out to test the world, and that in doing so, she had met one of the kindest souls she had encountered in years. When Marcus learned that his own grandmother had been thrown out of one of his stores, mocked and humiliated by his own employees, his expression turned cold and unreadable. He immediately called for his assistant, a sharp, efficient man named David, and demanded the security footage from that afternoon be pulled and reviewed without delay. Sitting alone in his private office that evening, Marcus watched everything unfold on the screen in front of him. He watched his staff mock an elderly woman for her appearance. He watched Denise humiliate her without hesitation. And he watched one single employee, a young woman he had never met, quietly defy the entire room to offer kindness with nothing to gain from it. Marcus leaned back in his chair, staring at the paused frame of Angela handing over her own money without a second thought. He ordered David to find out everything he could about her, driven by a question he couldn't quite shake. Who was this woman? And why had she acted so differently from everyone else in that building? Meanwhile, Angela walked home with an empty wallet and a heavy heart, unaware that a black luxury vehicle would soon be pulling up beside her on a quiet street, carrying a man who introduced himself as David, personal assistant to the CEO of Sinclair Jewelers, and a request that would change the entire direction of her life. Angela sat frozen when the sleek car rolled to a stop beside her, and the tinted window lowered to reveal a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself calmly as David, personal assistant to Marcus Sinclair. He explained that the woman she had helped earlier that day had sent him personally to bring her to the family estate, and that she would be perfectly safe. Angela's first instinct was to assume this was some kind of scam, but something in her gut told her to trust the moment, and after a long pause, she agreed to climb into the car. As the vehicle passed through golden gates and up a driveway lined with manicured gardens, Angela realized she had stepped into a world completely unlike anything she had ever known. Standing at the top of a grand staircase inside the estate was Marcus Sinclair himself, dressed in a tailored suit, his expression unreadable but composed. Angela had seen his face in business magazines before, but standing in front of him in person left her breathless in a way she hadn't expected. His grandmother appeared beside him almost immediately, thanking Angela warmly for her kindness, and revealing that she was, in fact, far from the poor, homeless woman she had appeared to be earlier that day. Angela's knees nearly buckled at the realization of exactly whose family she had unknowingly helped, and whose empire had just fired her without a second thought. Marcus revealed that he had already run a background check on Angela, learning that she lived alone, had no family nearby to lean on for support, and had spent years quietly carrying financial burdens by herself. Grateful for what she had done, he offered her designer clothing, luxury jewelry, and even the keys to a brand new vehicle as a thank you gift. Angela refused every single item, insisting she had helped his grandmother because it was the right thing to do, not because she expected any kind of reward. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, clearly unaccustomed to anyone turning down that level of generosity, before a small, genuine smile crossed his face. For what may have been the first time in years, his grandmother, delighted by Angela's honesty, asked her to stay at the estate for a while, and despite her hesitation, Angela eventually agreed. Just days later, tension arrived in the form of Vanessa Cole, a woman who had spent years positioning herself as Marcus's future wife, despite never actually being in a real relationship with him. The moment Vanessa laid eyes on Angela, her expression twisted with open hostility, accusing her of being a social climber, trying to manipulate her way into Marcus's fortune. Marcus, to Vanessa's visible shock, defended Angela without hesitation, making it clear that disrespecting his grandmother's guest would not be tolerated under his roof, a moment that planted the first seed of real fear inside Vanessa's carefully constructed plans. Determined to build her own independence, Angela insisted on finding work rather than living off the family's generosity, and Marcus offered her a position as his personal assistant at Sinclair Jewelers' corporate headquarters. The moment she stepped into that office, whispers followed her through every hallway, co-workers speculating cruelly that she had slept her way into the position. Vanessa, furious that her carefully built image as Marcus's intended wife was crumbling in real time, used her influence as a senior manager to spread rumors that painted Angela as nothing more than a gold-digging opportunist. The gossip escalated quickly, growing louder and crueler by the day, until it reached Marcus's ears during a company-wide meeting, where his patience finally broke in front of the entire executive team. Standing before the full boardroom, Marcus addressed Vanessa directly, telling her coldly that Angela had shown more genuine character in a single afternoon than most people in that building would show in a lifetime, and that anyone caught spreading further rumors about her would be terminated immediately. The room fell into stunned silence. Vanessa's carefully maintained image shattered in front of her colleagues, and later that evening, she marched into Marcus's office demanding an explanation for his public defense of a woman she considered beneath them both. Marcus told her plainly that they had never actually been together, that she had built an entire narrative in her own mind, and that it was time she accepted the truth rather than continuing to act as though she had any claim over his life. Over the following weeks, something shifted quietly between Marcus and Angela as they worked closely together late into the evenings. One night, without warning, Marcus asked her to go out with him, and Angela stood frozen, certain she had misheard him entirely. When he confirmed he meant exactly what he said, she reminded him gently that people would talk, that the distance between their worlds felt impossible to close. Marcus took her hand and told her plainly that he had no intention of hiding how he felt, regardless of what anyone outside that room believed. Angela agreed to give him a chance, unaware that the decision would soon draw the attention of gossip outlets, jealous rivals, and eventually Marcus's own mother, a woman known throughout the city for her sharp tongue and unwavering control over her son's life. Word of the growing relationship between Marcus and Angela spread through social media and entertainment blogs within days, painting Marcus as a man caught between two women and turning Angela into a target for public ridicule. Vanessa seized the opportunity, giving interviews where she painted herself as the woman scorned, hinting without stating it outright that Angela was nothing more than an opportunist who had wormed her way into a fortune she hadn't earned. What Vanessa hadn't accounted for was Marcus's grandmother, who called her own press conference outside the estate and declared publicly, in front of rolling cameras, that Vanessa had never been anything more than a family friend, and that the only woman she considered fit to stand beside her grandson was Angela Carter. The revelation stunned the crowd and sent Vanessa's carefully built reputation crumbling in real time, live in front of the entire city. Furious and desperate to reclaim any sense of control, Vanessa placed a phone call to Marcus's mother, Eleanor Sinclair, a woman known for guarding her family's reputation with ruthless precision. Vanessa painted Angela as a calculated social climber who had manipulated an elderly woman to worm her way into the family's fortune. And within hours, Eleanor had booked a flight home, determined to put an end to what she considered an embarrassing distraction. When she arrived, Eleanor confronted Marcus directly, demanding he end the relationship immediately, insisting that a woman with no name, no status, and no family connections had no place standing beside the heir to a billion-dollar company. Marcus, standing his ground for the first time in his adult life, told his mother plainly that he was a grown man capable of making his own decisions, and that if she couldn't accept Angela, that failure belonged entirely to her. Eleanor, unwilling to accept defeat so easily, arrived at Angela's small apartment days later, carrying a checkbook, offering her $5 million to disappear from her son's life permanently and never look back. Angela stared at the check for a long, quiet moment before tearing it cleanly in half, telling Eleanor through tears that she loved her son deeply, but that she would never accept money to walk away from someone she cared about, because she was not, and had never been, the kind of woman looking for a payout. Eleanor stood in stunned silence, something shifting behind her eyes as she studied Angela's face, before admitting quietly that she was stronger than she had given her credit for, and walking out without another word, leaving Angela alone with her tears and an uncertain future. Meanwhile, Vanessa, unwilling to accept that her plan had failed so completely, decided she needed something far more damaging than rumors to remove Angela permanently from the picture. Late one evening, while the household slept, She slipped quietly into the family's private vault and stole one of the most valuable diamond necklaces in their entire collection, planting it carefully among Angela's belongings before anyone noticed she had ever been near the vault at all. The following morning, security guards stormed into the estate alongside Eleanor and Vanessa, accusing Angela of theft in front of the entire household staff. Angela stood frozen in disbelief as Vanessa performed distress for the cameras of the family's own security team, insisting through fake tears that she had never wanted to believe such a thing about someone she had trusted. Marcus's grandmother stepped forward immediately, her voice calm but unmistakably firm, insisting that Angela possessed far too much integrity for something like this, and that someone in that room was lying. Despite her defense, the weight of the accusation, the whispers among staff, and the uncertainty clouding even Eleanor's expression became too much for Angela to bear, and she packed her few belongings and walked out of the estate entirely, refusing to fight a battle that felt already lost. Marcus wanted to chase after her immediately, but his grandmother stopped him, telling him quietly that the only way to truly clear Angela's name was to prove the truth beyond any shadow of doubt, rather than simply defending her with words that people had already stopped believing. Marcus spent the following days reviewing every frame of security footage from that night, speaking privately with staff members, and piecing together a timeline that led directly back to one person. When he finally gathered enough evidence, he called the entire household together in the estate's main hall, including Vanessa, who sat sipping tea with practiced calm, clearly unaware that her carefully constructed lie was about to collapse in front of everyone who mattered. Marcus played the footage on a large screen for the room to see. Vanessa entering the vault after hours, removing the necklace, and slipping quietly into Angela's room to plant it among her things. Gasps filled the room as the truth became impossible to deny, and Vanessa's face drained of all color as she stammered denials that convinced absolutely no one. Security escorted Vanessa from the estate that same afternoon, her carefully built reputation destroyed beyond repair, and her dream of ever standing beside Marcus gone for good. Eleanor sat in stunned silence for a long while afterward, finally admitting out loud that she had misjudged Angela completely, and that the young woman had never wanted money, status, or attention. All she had ever wanted was Marcus, and the simple dignity of being treated fairly. Marcus wasted no time tracking Angela down, sending a car to bring her to a private rooftop lounge overlooking the city skyline, where candles flickered gently against the evening air. When Angela arrived and saw him standing there waiting for her, she barely had time to process the moment before he dropped to one knee, holding out a ring and telling her that he no longer cared what the outside world thought, because she was the only woman he had ever truly wanted beside him. Angela's eyes filled with tears as Marcus told her she was the strongest, most honest person he had ever known, and that her kindness toward a stranger had ended up changing the course of his entire family. Through tears, she said yes, and as he slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, the weight of everything she had endured, the mockery, the accusations, the sleepless nights of uncertainty, finally lifted from her shoulders. Their engagement made headlines within hours, turning Angela into a symbol of quiet dignity for people who had spent their own lives feeling overlooked and underestimated by a world that too often judged people by what they owned rather than who they were. Denise, the very manager who had fired Angela for showing basic human kindness, learned of the engagement while working an ordinary shift at the very same jewelry store where it had all begun. When Marcus and Angela walked through those doors together weeks later, the room fell completely silent. Marcus looked directly at Denise and told her plainly that she had insulted his grandmother, mocked an innocent woman, and driven away one of the most honest employees the company had ever had, and that her employment with Sinclair Jewelers was over-effective immediately. Denise stood frozen, watching the woman she had once humiliated walk away on the arm of the very man whose empire she had spent years working beneath, without ever truly understanding what mattered most. On the day of their wedding, the ceremony drew attention from across the entire country, filled with more elegance and emotion than either of them could have imagined possible just months earlier. As the ceremony neared its close, Marcus's grandmother stepped forward one final time, presenting Angela with a rare family heirloom, a gesture that welcomed her fully and permanently into a family she had once nearly lost everything to help. Marcus later placed a stunning necklace around her neck himself, telling her softly that she had given him something no amount of money could ever buy, a reason to believe in real love again. Angela, standing in the arms of the man she loved, finally understood that the old woman's words from that very first afternoon had been true all along. Good things really do happen to good people, especially the ones who choose kindness even when the whole room is laughing at them for it. Would you have shown that same kindness to a stranger who looked like they had nothing, even knowing everyone around you was watching and ready to judge you for it? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, wait until you see what happens in our next video, where a quiet janitor overhears something that brings down an entire corporation. Subscribe for more real stories of kindness, karma, and quiet justice.